If you're looking for a simple, low-cost way to invest your short-term cash without the risk of losing your hard-earned money, there are two brand new ETFs on the market that can help you do just that. In this video, we'll look at each one of these new ETFs, their pros, their cons, and how they stack up against the other options you have for earning more interest on your cash. And maybe most importantly, how to actually use these ETFs as a place to hold your emergency fund. If you're new here, my name is Jay, and from here on out, I'll be your personal guide to getting the most out of your money so you can live a richer, less stressful life. The two ETFs we're going to look at today both come from one of the biggest names in the ETF world, Vanguard. And both are designed to help us simply invest in T-bills with a lot less effort than doing it on our own. But they take a slightly different approach than the other. Here's how they work. The first ETF is VBIL, the Vanguard 0 to 3 month Treasury Bill ETF. This ETF tracks the Bloomberg 0 to 3 month Treasury Bill Index, which means it almost exclusively invests in the shortest duration T-bills you can buy, those with maturities of 3 months or less. Basically, you can think of it as a pre-made T-bill ladder, made up of only 0 to 3 month T-bills. Now within the ETF, you'll have a variety of different T-bills within that 0 to 3 month maturity range. So the yield of the ETF will differ from whatever the current T-bill yield is for any particular maturity date. I've done a deep dive video in the past on how to construct your own T-bill ladder, but if you go the ETF route, there are some things you'll have to consider in return for that convenience. The first is, like all ETFs, there's an expense ratio attached to it, a fee that Vanguard charges for running the fund. And in the case of both of these ETFs, it's 0.07%. That means you'll pay $7 per year on every $10,000 you hold in the VBIL ETF. VBIL is also unique and very different than an equity ETF that just holds stocks. So there are some important things you should understand about how VBIL works before rushing off to buy it. The first is that the price on VBIL will be extremely stable. Sure, you'll see the price rise over the course of the month as the ETF accumulates interest from the T-bills it holds. But once the ETF pays its monthly dividend, for lack of a better word, the price will essentially reset back to a baseline level and start the process all over again. It won't be like VOO or SCHD, where you see the value of the ETF consistently rise over time. If we look at the chart of SGov, an extremely popular ETF that VBIL will be directly competing with, you can see how this works in practice and produces this shark's tooth price chart over time. And while VBIL is extremely new, you can see the same trend taking place on its price chart as well, just in case you didn't believe me. How much the price will go up each month is simply a factor of interest rates, as the ETF will naturally accumulate more interest each month when the rates are high and less when the rates are low. I mentioned a second ago that VBIL is a direct competitor to SGov, which is extremely popular. So why would you choose VBIL over SGov in the first place? The main reason would be the expense ratio, as SGov charges 0.09% versus VBIL's 0.07%. It's a $2 yearly difference on every $10,000 invested, so definitely not something to sell one and buy the other over. But if you're starting fresh and looking to buy one or the other, why not go with the cheaper option? VBIL also has the power of the Vanguard brand behind it. And there are a lot of people that will invest in it simply because they have a lot of faith and a lot of respect for Vanguard as a firm. There are some important pros and cons you'll need to know that apply to both of these new ETFs, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes after we take a look at the other new ETF on the market for your short-term cash. It's VGUS, the Vanguard Ultra Short Treasury ETF, which sounds like pretty much the same thing, right? Ultra short term versus 0 to 3 months. What's the big difference? The difference is that where VBIL holds only treasury bills with durations of 0 to 3 months, VGUS is made up of T-bills, notes, and bonds with maturities of 12 months or less. So it'll have a mix of slightly longer duration investments inside of it. It's pretty interesting that VGUS states it invests in treasury notes and treasury bonds, because each of those have much longer durations than the ETF's stated 12 months. If you recall, treasury bills, T-bills, have maturities of 12 months or less. Treasury notes have maturities of 2, 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, and Treasury bonds have maturities of 20 to 30 years. So this likely means that VGUS may invest in some of those longer duration Treasury products that are within 12 months of their maturity dates through the secondary market as part of its strategy. If we look at the average maturity of each ETF, VBIL is roughly 45 days, where VGUS is around 100 days, which may seem like a minor difference, but it will affect how sensitive the ETF is to interest rate changes. VBIL, being shorter duration, will move more in real time with the interest rate changes in the market, whereas VGUS will likely be slower to react. There could be periods where you find that VGUS having a noticeably higher or lower yield than the current rate. So why would you want to invest in either of these ETFs? What are the benefits? Both of these are intended to be cash equivalents, or as close to that as possible. They're intended to be a place to hold your emergency fund or cash you're waiting to put to use in the stock market or for another investment, not a place to store your money hoping to have it grow over the long term. And one of the big advantages to holding either of these ETFs is that because they invest in treasury bills, they're going to be mostly exempt from state income taxes. For someone like me who lives in New York State, any interest I earn on my high yield savings account is taxed as income at whatever tax bracket I end up in. But by investing in T-bills, either directly or through ETFs like these, I can avoid nearly all of that state income tax I'd otherwise be paying on my short-term cash. And I say nearly because these ETFs and their competitors like SGov do hold tiny amounts of cash and non-T-bill investments, which keep them from being 100% state tax exempt, like if you bought your T-bills directly through your broker or the Treasury Direct website. But just like with the expense ratio, it's a very small amount and certainly insignificant in the long run. But one downside you may want to watch out for, especially if you're considering VBIL or VGUS or any other Treasury ETF as a place for your savings that you want to access regularly, is that if you take your cash out and you sell shares of the ETF, you could incur capital gains that you'll have to deal with at tax time. Again, this won't be much as the price of these ETFs won't fluctuate a great deal, but it is another form or two to deal with it during tax season. And it's something you wouldn't have to deal with in a high yield savings account or taking the cash from a directly held T-bill that has grown in maturity. Another important note before buying is about the dividends that these ETFs pay. They're not true dividends as you might expect from a stock ETF. Those generally are what we call qualified dividends. They get taxed at a special lower rate than ordinary income does. The dividends that VBIL and VGUS and their competitors like SGov pay aren't actually dividends in that sense. They're simply a distribution of the interest earned off of the T-bills that these ETFs hold. Therefore, those monthly distributions you're receiving will be taxed as ordinary income, at least at the federal level. It's not something any different than if you did hold the T-bills directly or keeping the money in a high-yield savings account, but it might be confusing if you've only ever dealt with stock ETFs before. Now, the big question. Will I be investing in either VBIL or VGUS? Probably not at the moment. I'm still happy buying and laddering my T-bills directly through the Treasury Direct website for now, and if you're interested in doing the same, click on this video on your screen right now to learn how to cut out the middleman and build a T-bill ladder that can act as an ETF of your own. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.